The ships came on a Tuesday morning, 300 of them, black as night, silent as death. They appeared above Earth like dark clouds that blocked the sun. People on every continent stopped what they were doing and looked up at the sky. Some prayed. Some screamed. Most just stood there, frozen. Unable to believe what their eyes were telling them, the Velen Collective had arrived. They had conquered 17 star systems before Earth, 17 planets filled with intelligent life, 17 species that had technology far better than anything humans had ever built. And every single one of them had surrendered without a fight. The Velen did not need to fire weapons. They simply showed up, proved they were stronger, and waited for the fear to do its work. High Commander Toril stood on the bridge of his flagship and looked down at the blue planet below. He had done this many times before. He knew how it would end. The creatures on this world would panic for a few days. Their leaders would argue and fight among themselves. Then they would realize they had no choice. They would bow down and accept integration into the collective. It always happened the same way. Send the message, Toril ordered. His second officer, Marin, pressed a button on the control panel. A signal went out to every device on Earth, every phone, every computer, every television. The aliens wanted everyone to hear their words in soul. A woman named Una Park was the first human to understand what the aliens were saying. She worked for the United Nations as a language expert. Her job was to study patterns and find meaning in sounds that nobody else could decode. When the alien transmission came through, her computer went crazy with data. But Una stayed calm. She had trained her whole life for moments like this. It took her 6 hours to crack the alien language. When she finally understood the message, her blood went cold. The message was simple. Earth had been selected. Humans would join the Velen Collective. Resistance would result in death. The survival chance for anyone who fought back was almost zero. Humanity had 10 days to accept, 10 days to surrender, or die. YUNA sent her translation to every government on the planet. Within hours, the world was in chaos. Some countries wanted to fight. Others wanted to give up immediately. The United Nations held emergency meetings that lasted through the night. Nobody could agree on anything, but deep in the mountains of Korea, a different kind of meeting was taking place. General Wu Jinkong was 63 years old. He had fought in wars. He had lost friends. He had seen things that gave him nightmares. But he had never felt fear like this before. The enemy above them was not human. They had weapons that could destroy cities in seconds. They had shields that could stop nuclear bombs. Fighting them with armies and missiles would be like fighting a hurricane with a kitchen knife. So, Wu Jin did not invite soldiers to his secret meeting. He invited scientists. The facility was hidden under a mountain. It had been built decades ago, meant to survive the worst disasters imaginable. Now, it would serve a different purpose. It would be the place where humanity made its last stand. 12 people sat around a long table. They were young and old, men and women, experts in physics, computers, biology, and engineering. They were the smartest minds Korea had to offer, and they all looked terrified. "We'll not lie to you," Wu Jin said. His voice was steady, but his hands shook slightly. "Our chances are bad. Very bad. The Velen have conquered species that were thousands of years ahead of us. Species with spaceships and energy weapons and things we cannot even imagine. They all lost." A young man raised his hand. His name was Hajun Lee. He was only 29 years old, but he was already famous in the world of physics. His mind worked in ways that other scientists could not follow. Some called him a genius. Others called him crazy. Maybe he was both. "If everyone lost," Hejun said, "then why are we here? Why not just give up?" Wu Jin smiled. It was a cold smile, but there was something dangerous in his eyes. Something like hope. "'Cause every species that lost was logical," Wu Jin said. They looked at the numbers. They calculated the odds. They saw that fighting was pointless, so they surrendered. They did the smart thing. He leaned forward and placed his hands on the table. "Humans have never done the smart thing. We fight wars we cannot win. We climb mountains that will kill us. We sail into storms that should sink our ships. We are not logical. We are stubborn. We are crazy. And that might be the only advantage we have. The room was silent for a moment. Then a woman spoke up. Her name was Sujin Chai. She was an engineer who built machines that connected to the human brain. Her work was so advanced that most people thought it was science fiction. The general is right, Sujin said. I have been studying the alien signals. Their ships, their weapons, their drones, everything is connected. They share one mind, one consciousness. They think together, act together, decide together. It makes them incredibly powerful. But it also makes them predictable, Hajun added, his eyes lighting up with understanding. They have never faced an enemy that thinks differently, an enemy that cannot agree with itself. A young woman at the end of the table laughed softly. Her name was Hannah Yoon. She was only 22 years old, but she had already broken into computer systems that were supposed to be unbreakable. The government had once tried to arrest her. Now they needed her help. You want to confuse them? Hannah said. Use our chaos against their order. Exactly, Woojin said. We cannot beat them with strength. We cannot beat them with technology. But maybe, just maybe, we can beat them by being human. Outside the mountain, the world was falling apart. Riots broke out in major cities. Markets crashed. People fought over food and water. The Velen watched it all from their ships. Satisfied that their plan was working perfectly, they had no idea that 12 people in a hidden room were about to change everything. Yuna. Park arrived at the mountain facility the next day. She brought with her every piece of alien communication she had collected. The enemy thought humans were too primitive to understand their language. They had been wrong, and their mistake would cost them dearly. The countdown had begun. 10 days to save the world, 9 days now, and humanity was just getting started. Day 3 of the countdown. Hi, Commander Toral watched the footage from Earth with growing confusion. His observer drones were everywhere. They flew over cities and towns, recording everything the humans did. Toral had seen this process many times before. He knew what fear looked like. He knew how conquered species behaved in their final days. But humans were not behaving correctly. In London, as people gathered in parks and sang songs. In Tokyo, artists painted giant murals on the sides of buildings. In New York, strangers hugged each other on the streets. In Brazil, thousands of people danced through the night. Children flew kites. Old couples held hands and watched the sunset. Young people fell in love. They were not preparing for surrender. They were celebrating life. What is wrong with them? Marin asked. Have they lost their minds? Terrell did not answer. Something about this species made him uncomfortable. They were weak. They had no real weapons. Their technology was primitive, and yet they refused to act like victims. They refused to beg. It was annoying and strangely unsettling. Deep under the mountain, the secret team worked without rest. General Wu Jin had divided them into groups. Each group had a specific job. Together, they were building something that had never been built before. Sujin Chai sat in front of a wall of screens. Lines of alien code scrolled past her eyes. She had been awake for 40 hours, but she could not stop now. Every minute counted. Their network is beautiful, she whispered to herself, and terrifying. The Velen did not use computers the way humans did. Their technology was based on a shared consciousness. Every ship, every weapon, every drone was connected to a single mind. When one Velen soldier saw something, all Velen soldiers saw it. When one ship changed direction, all ships knew instantly. They moved as one. They thought as one. They were one. This unity made them incredibly strong. In battle, they had no delay, no confusion, no miscommunication. A human army needed generals to give orders and soldiers to follow them. The Velen needed nothing like that. They simply knew what to do, all at the same time. But Sujin had found something interesting. A small crack in their perfect system. She called Hajun over to her station. The young physicist looked at her data and immediately understood. The translation matrix, he said. It is the only part of their network that accepts outside input. Sujin nodded. When they conquer a new species, they need to communicate with them, so they built a system that can learn any language. It takes in foreign sounds and converts them into Velen thoughts. It is a door, Hajun said slowly. A door that they left open because they never imagined anyone would walk through it. On the other side of the room, Hannah Yoon was typing faster than any human should be able to type. Her fingers danced across the keyboard like they had minds of their own. She had not slept in 3 days. Empty coffee cups surrounded her workstation like a small army. I found it, she announced suddenly. I found the way in. Everyone stopped what they were doing. They gathered around Hannah's screen and watched as she explained. Their translation system is quantum encrypted. That means it uses the laws of physics to protect itself. In theory, it should be impossible to hack. Hannah smiled. It was a tired smile, but full of pride. In theory, she had spent 72 hours studying the alien code. She had found patterns that nobody else could see. She had made connections that nobody else could make. And she had discovered something wonderful. Encryption is just math, Hannah said. Very complicated math, but still math. And math does not care who invented it. Their encryption follows the same rules as ours. They just thought nobody would be smart enough to figure it out. Unipark entered the room at that moment. She carried a tablet full of new information. For the past 3 days, she had been listening to every alien transmission she could find. The Velen were careless. They spoke freely among themselves, never imagining that humans could understand them. I know what they really want, Eunice said. Her voice was quiet, but everyone heard her. They are not going to kill us. That is good news, Woojin said carefully. Is it not? Eunice shook her head. No, it is much worse. She explained what she had learned. The Velen Collective had conquered so many worlds that they had run out of workers. Their own population was small. They needed slaves to mine their planets, build their ships, and grow their food. Every species they conquered became part of their workforce. Earth had 8 billion people, 8 billion potential workers. To the Velen, humanity was not a threat to be destroyed. Humanity was a resource to be harvested. They will not bomb our cities, Eunice said. They will take them. They will put collars around our necks and chains around our wrists. They will ship us across the galaxy to work until we die. Our children will be born into slavery, and their children after them. The room was silent. The horror of it settled over everyone like a heavy blanket. Woojin was the first to speak. Then we do not just need to survive. We need to win. How? Someone asked. We cannot fight their weapons. We cannot match their technology. What do we have that they do not? Hajun stood up. His eyes were bright with an idea that was either brilliant or insane. With Hajun, it was usually both. We have disagreement, he said. We have argument. We have chaos. We have been fighting each other since the beginning of our history. We cannot agree on anything. We have wars over religion, politics, money, land, even over what color a dress is on the internet. Some people laughed nervously. They did not understand where he was going. The Velen have never disagreed about anything. Hajun continued. They share one mind. They have one opinion. They have never experienced doubt or confusion or conflict. They do not know what it feels like to argue with yourself. He walked to the central screen and pulled up a diagram. We are going to teach them. The plan was crazy. It was impossible. It went against everything that military strategy had ever taught. They were going to infect the most powerful fleet in the galaxy, with the most dangerous weapon humanity had ever created, human. Nature itself, 7 days remained. The countdown continued, and in the darkness of the mountain, a small group of humans prepared to do something that no species had ever done before. They prepared to fight back. Day. Night. The world outside was dying. Not from alien weapons, but from fear. Markets had crashed completely. Stores had been emptied by desperate people. Some cities had no power because workers had stopped coming to their jobs. What was the point of working when the world was about to end? But under the mountain, there was no time for despair. Every second mattered. Every hour brought them closer to the deadline. Hajun had not slept in 4 days. His eyes were red. His hands trembled from too much coffee. But his mind was sharper than ever. He stood in front of a holographic display, explaining his plan to the team for the 100th time. "The Velen think as one mind," he said. "This is their greatest strength. But strength can also be weakness. If we can disrupt their unity, even for a few seconds, their entire system will fall apart." Sujin nodded. She had spent the last 2 days mapping the alien network. It was massive and complex, but she was beginning to understand how it worked. "Their consciousness moves like water," she explained. "It flows from ship to ship, mind to mind. When one of them makes a decision, the others follow instantly. There is no debate, no hesitation, no individual thought." "But what happens when you drop a stone into water?" Hajun asked. "Ripples," Hannah answered. "The water breaks apart, then comes back together." "Exactly. We need to create a ripple in their collective mind. Something that will make them pause. Something that will make them question themselves, even for just a moment." Lieutenant Minho Beek had been quiet until now. He was a military strategist, not a scientist. His job was to think about battle plans and troop movements. But this plan was unlike anything he had ever studied. "Even if you can create this ripple," Minho said, "how does that help us?" "A few seconds of confusion will not stop 300 warships." "A few seconds is all we need," Hajun replied. "In those few seconds, their shields will waver. Their weapons will hesitate. Their formation will break. And in those few seconds, we will strike with everything we have." The plan was taking shape. But they still needed one crucial piece: the weapon. Not a bomb. Not a missile. Something far more dangerous. Hannah worked alone in a small room filled with screens and wires. She was building a program unlike anything that had ever existed. It was not designed to destroy or disable. It was designed to introduce something the Velen had never experienced: disagreement. She called it the Chaos Code. It was made from the most chaotic things she could find: human history, every war, every argument, every debate, every political fight, every religious conflict, every philosophical disagreement. She gathered thousands of years of human contradiction and compressed it into a single signal. The program would enter the Velen network through their translation matrix. It would disguise itself as a language update, a routine piece of data that their system would accept without question. Once inside, it would spread through their collective consciousness like ink in water. The Velen would suddenly experience what it felt like to disagree with yourself, to doubt your own decisions, to question orders that you had always followed without thinking. For a species that had never known internal conflict, it would be devastating. "Will it work?" General Wu Jin asked, watching Hannah type. "I do not know," Hannah admitted. "I have never tried to hack an alien mind before. But their system has rules, just like any other system. And every system has weaknesses." On day 6, Una made a discovery that changed everything. She had been monitoring alien communications non-stop. Most of it was boring status reports, navigation data, maintenance logs. But then she caught something different. A private conversation between High Commander Toril and his second officer. They were talking about previous conquests. "The others broke so easily," Toril said. "I expected more from a species with nuclear weapons." "They're primitive," Marin replied. "They fight among themselves like animals. They cannot even agree on basic facts about their own planet. How could they possibly resist us? Their chaos is their weakness." "It always has been." Una recorded the conversation and played it for the team. When it finished, the room was quiet. Then Hajun laughed. It was a strange sound in such a serious moment. "They think our chaos is our weakness," he said. "They have no idea that we are about to use it as a weapon." Day 7. The program was almost finished. Hannah made her final adjustments, while the others prepared for what would come next. Colonel Yoonji Shin had arrived from the surface. She was in charge of Earth's remaining military forces. There were not many left, but they were ready to fight. "When the signal goes out, You will have approximately 10 seconds, Hajun told her. 10 seconds, where their defenses will be weak. That is your window. 10 seconds, Yanji repeated. That is not much time. It is more than anyone else has ever had against them. The final piece of the puzzle came from an unexpected source. A young engineer named Jisoo Kwan had been working on the delivery system. The signal needed to reach the Velen flagship, which was protected by the strongest shields in their fleet. We cannot send the signal directly, Jisoo explained. Their defenses would block it. But their own drones are broadcasting constantly. They are sending information back to the ships all the time. You want to hijack their own drones, Sujin realized. Yes, we take control of one drone, just for a millisecond, long enough to send our signal through their own network. They will never see it coming. The plan was complete. In 3 days, the world would either be free or enslaved. There was no middle ground. No second chances. General Wu Jin gathered the team for one final meeting. They looked exhausted. They looked scared. But they also looked determined. I cannot promise that this will work, Wu Jin said. I cannot promise that we will survive. But I can promise you this: whatever happens, humanity will not go quietly. We will not surrender. We will not kneel. We will show the galaxy what humans are made of. He looked at each of them in turn. They came here expecting victims. They will find warriors. Outside the mountain, the alien ships waited in perfect formation. They had no doubt about the outcome. They had never lost. They were about to learn that there is always a first time. Day 10. The deadline had arrived. High Commander Toril stood on the bridge of his flagship, hands clasped behind his back. Below him, Earth rotated slowly, its blue oceans and green lands glowing in the sunlight. A beautiful world. A valuable world. Soon, it would belong to the collective. Around him, his officers worked in perfect silence. They did not need to speak. Their thoughts flowed together like rivers joining into a sea. Every Velen on every ship knew exactly what every other Velen was thinking. It was the natural way. The only way. The deadline has passed, Marin reported. The humans have not surrendered. Toril was not surprised. Some species needed a demonstration before they understood. A few destroyed cities would teach them fear. After that, they would beg to join the collective. Select 5 major population centers, Toril ordered. Begin the demonstration. Cross the fleet. 300 weapons locked onto their targets. Seoul, Tokyo, New York, London, Cairo, millions of lives. About to end in seconds. In the mountain facility, alarms screamed. They are powering up weapons, Colonel Yoonji Shin shouted. We have maybe 2 minutes before they fire. General Wu Jin turned to Hannah. The young hacker sat at her station, her finger hovering over a single key. Months of work. Billions of lives. Everything came down to this moment, now Wu Jin said. Hannah pressed the key. The signal was tiny. Just a few lines of code, disguised as a routine translation update. It slipped into the Velen network through one of their own drones. Accepted without question by their security systems for a moment. Nothing happened. Then the chaos began. On the flagship, Toril felt it first. A strange sensation in his mind. Like a voice that was his own, but different. A thought that he had not chosen to think. Asterisk, why are we doing this? Asterisk, he pushed the thought away. It was not his. It could not be his. But then came another. Asterisk, what gives us the right? And another. They have done nothing to us. Asterisk all around him. His officers stopped working. Their perfect coordination shattered. They stared at each other with eyes full of confusion. For the first time in their lives, they were not thinking as one. They were thinking as individuals, and individuals had questions, Commander, Marin asked. His voice sounded wrong, uncertain. I feel strange. There is something in my thoughts. Something that does not belong. Toril tried to give orders, but his own mind was not obeying him. The signal had spread through the entire fleet in milliseconds. Every Velen was experiencing the same thing. Thousands of years of human conflict compressed into a single moment of doubt. They felt the rage of ancient wars. the confusion of political debates, the despair of religious conflicts. Every argument humanity had ever had poured into their collective. Consciousness like poison, for creatures that had never disagreed about anything. It was like being torn apart from the inside. Ships began to drift out of formation. Weapons that had been locked onto targets went silent as their operators hesitated. Shields flickered as the minds controlling them struggled to reach consensus. Asterisk, fire the weapons. Asterisk, asterisk. No. Wait. They deserve to be destroyed, do they? What have they done? Asterisk, asterisk, we are conquerors. This is what we do. Asterisk, asterisk. But why? Why must we conquer? Asterisk, the Velen collective was arguing with itself. For the first time in 10,000 years, they could not agree. Colonel Yunji had been waiting for this moment. Her forces were a smaller handful of fighter jets, some missiles that should have been useless against Velen shields. But she knew that this was their only chance. All units fire everything, she commanded. Now, the sky lit up with human weapons. Missiles streaked toward the alien ships. Fighter jets dove through gaps in the formation that should not have existed. It was a desperate attack, the last gasp of a dying planet, and it worked. The Velen shields, normally impenetrable, flickered and failed. Ships that would have easily avoided incoming missiles sat motionless in space, their crews too confused to react. In the first 30 seconds, 17 alien ships were destroyed. On the flagship, Terrell screamed orders that nobody followed. His officers were too busy fighting the voices in their own heads. Some of them had fallen to their knees, overwhelmed by emotions they had never felt before. Asterisk, I am afraid. I am angry. I do not understand what is happening. I want it to stop. I want asterisk. They wanted things. Individual things. Personal things. For the first time in their existence, they were not part of a whole. They were alone. And being alone was terrifying. The battle lasted exactly 10 minutes. It should have been a massacre 300 advanced warships against Earth's primitive defenses. Instead, it was a disaster for the collective. 53 Velen ships were destroyed or disabled. Another 100 were damaged. The rest finally managed to restore their collective consciousness, but by then it was too late. Their perfect formation was scattered. Their confidence was shattered. Their plan was ruined. Toril ordered a retreat. It was the first time in recorded history that the Velen collective had ever retreated from anything. In the mountain facility, the team watched the alien ships pull back toward the edge of the solar system. Nobody spoke. They were too tired, too shocked, too overwhelmed by what they had accomplished. Hajun was the first to break the silence. "We did it," he whispered. "We actually did it." Hannah started to laugh. Then she started to cry. Then she did both at the same time. Around her, others did the same. Years of tension released in a flood of emotion. General Wujin walked to the window. He could not see the sky from underground, but he knew what was out there. Freedom, safety, a future. "It is not over," he said quietly. "They will come back. Maybe not tomorrow. Maybe not next year. But they will come back." He turned to face his team. "And when they do, we will be ready." Outside, the world was waking up to the news. The aliens were retreating. Earth was safe. Against all odds, against all logic, humanity had won. People poured into the streets. They cheered and cried and hugged strangers. Church bells rang. Fireworks exploded. For one beautiful moment, every human on Earth shared the same feeling. Hope they had looked into the darkness and refused to blink. They had faced an enemy that had never lost and made them run. They had used their greatest weakness, their beautiful, chaotic, contradictory humanity as a weapon, and it had saved them all. 1 month after the battle, the Velen fleet sat at the edge of the solar system, far from Earth but not gone completely. They were waiting, watching, trying to understand what had happened to them. High Commander Toril was no longer High Commander. The collective had stripped him of his rank. He had failed. He had retreated. He had shown weakness. In 10,000 years of conquest, no Velen leader had ever done these things. But the punishment did not matter to Toril anymore. Something had changed inside him. During those terrible 10 minutes of chaos, he had experienced something new. He had felt what it was like to be an individual. To have thoughts that were his alone. To question instead of obey. The feeling had faded when the collective consciousness was restored. But the memory remained. And memories, he was learning, could be dangerous things. He was not the only one. Across the fleet, thousands of Velen carried the same secret. They had tasted individuality. They had felt fear and doubt and wonder. They could not forget. They did not want to forget. Quietly, in the dark corners of their minds where the collective could not reach, they were starting to ask questions. Meanwhile, on Earth, the world was changing. General Wujin stood before the United Nations General Assembly. Every seat was filled. Leaders from every country watched him with hopeful eyes. They wanted answers. They wanted direction. They wanted to know what came next. "We want a battle," Wujin said. His voice was steady and strong. "But we have not won the war. The Velen are still out there. They will come back. Maybe not soon, but eventually. And when they do, we must be ready." The assembly was silent. The fear of the invasion was still fresh in everyone's minds. The celebrations had faded. Now came the hard work. "But being ready does not mean being afraid," Wujin continued. "We survived because we were human, because we were chaotic and stubborn and unpredictable. Our differences, which we always thought made us weak, turned out to be our greatest strength." He paused and looked around the room. "We must not lose that strength. We must not become like them all, thinking the same way, all following the same leader, all afraid to disagree. Our diversity is our power. Our arguments are our shield. Our chaos is our weapon." The speech was broadcast to every corner of the world. People listened in cafes and living rooms, in hospitals and schools, in cars and parks. They heard a message that gave them hope. We are not victims. We are not weak. We are human. And that is enough. In the mountain facility, the team that had saved the world was still working. There was so much to do. They needed to understand alien technology. They needed to prepare defenses. They needed to make sure this never happened again. But they also needed to do something else. Something more important. They needed to send a message. Dr. Una Park composed the transmission herself. It was sent directly to the Velen flagship, using the same communication channels they had hacked during the battle. She knew they would receive it. She knew Toril would hear it. The message appeared on his screen late one night. He read it alone, in the darkness of his quarters. "You came to integrate us," the message said. "You planned to make us part of your collective, but you never asked what we might add to it. You never wondered how we might change you. You thought you were bringing order to chaos. Instead, we brought something to you that you have never had before. Doubt, choice, freedom." There was more. Files attached to the message. Reports from Velen ships whose crews had started asking questions. Artwork created by soldiers who had never imagined creating anything. Poetry written by officers who had never thought an individual thought. The Chaos Code had planted seeds. And those seeds were growing. "You wanted to change us," the message concluded. "You've never considered that we might change you? The galaxy is vast. There are other species suffering under your rule. Other minds that dream of freedom. We will find them. We will help them. And one day, the collective will face a choice. Keep fighting against the chaos, or embrace it." Toril read the message 3 times. Then he deleted it from the official records, but he saved a copy for himself. 50. Years later, Ambassador Dae-hee Moon stood on the observation deck of a ship called the Defiance. It was the first human starship built with a combination of Earth technology and knowledge gained from studying Velen Rex. Its mission was diplomatic, not military. Humanity had learned that some battles were won with words, not weapons. Below her stretched the Andromeda Relay, a meeting point in deep space where 17 species had gathered. All of them had once been slaves of the Velen Collective. All of them had been freed. Some had fought their own battles for independence. Others had been inspired by humanity's example. A few had been helped directly by human agents who smuggled the chaos code into their worlds. The collective still existed. But it was smaller now, weaker, and changed. Some Velen had actually defected, choosing individuality over unity. They lived among other species now, learning what it meant to be alone and discovering that alone did not have to mean lonely. The Council recognizes Earth's representative, a translation system announced. Dahi stepped forward. Behind her, a holographic emblem rotated slowly. It was not a flag of conquest. It was an open hand, reaching upward and outward, the symbol of the human alliance. 50 years ago, Dahi said, we were nearly destroyed. A great power came to our world and demanded our surrender. They had a plan for us. They wanted to make us slaves, workers, tools for their empire. But we had a better plan. She looked around the assembly. Alien faces of every shape and color watched her. Some had eyes. Some had sensors. Some communicated through light and sound in ways humans still did not fully understand. But all of them listened. Our plan was simple. Be human, be stubborn, be chaotic. Fight not with weapons, but with ideas. And when they tried to break us, we broke them instead. The assembly was silent. Now we share that gift with you. Not unity. Not control. Not a plan that tells you what to think. We offer something better. The freedom to disagree. The right to question. The power to choose your own path. She raised her hand toward the stars. The galaxy tried to fit us into their plan, but humanity has never followed anyone's plan, including our own. And that is why we survived. That is why we are here. That is why we will never stop reaching for the stars. The assembly erupted in sounds of approval. 17 species, celebrating together. Different languages, different bodies, different minds. But all sharing the same dream, freedom. The Velen had planned to conquer Earth. Humanity had planned something better, and the galaxy would never be the same.